Hi, in looking more at some behavioral traits that are very common with someone who's struggling with codependency, one of them is someone who chases and craves relationships. By the way, all of this comes from How to Stop Chasing Rejection. You can find it on Amazon.com. So if I'm chasing or craving a relationship, it's very normal to go from one to one to one to one. So it's sort of like playing leapfrog with relationships. Part of that is because that's how I'm getting my value. So if I'm getting my value by being super useful to someone else, as soon as I don't have someone else to be useful for, I don't have any more value. And that feels so uncomfortable, right? And so this is why I'm going to be with this person, and then I'm this person, and then this person. Even though I could be just almost obsessed with this person, as soon as it's done, I could move right on to the next one. That's what happens when we struggle with codependent traits. And again, it's because we get our value from being valuable to someone else, which kind of bleeds into one of the next traits, which is the fear of being alone. So someone who has codependency or struggles with codependent traits, if you ask their biggest fear, a lot of times they'll say that I'll end up alone, or that I'm always going to be alone, or that I'm not going to be with somebody. So that's really common. And again, it's similar reasoning, right? Because if I'm feeling valuable and getting my value from being with someone or having someone need me or being able to do something for someone, that becomes my whole life. So if I'm not able to do that, I sort of feel like I don't have a life anymore. So these are all issues that come from struggling with codependency. Another trait is poor boundaries. When we struggle with codependency, we can have really poor boundaries. We can try to control what someone does, what they say, how they dress, what they eat, where they go, where they work, who they talk to. We can get really, really controlling. And anytime we're controlling any of those things, we're actually overstepping boundaries. So we don't really have boundaries for us with other people. And then we also don't have boundaries on the other side of the street when it comes to us being around other people. Instead of realizing and appreciating that's this person. If they're hungry, they'll get food. If they're thirsty, I'm sure they'll figure it out. They're an adult, right? We're talking about adults, not children. But instead of that, we feel so responsible for others' needs and for trying to meet other people's needs. So it does come from a place of good intentions and from trying to take responsibility, but we end up becoming responsible for things that are not our responsibilities. So really, it's really learning what are my responsibilities versus what are your responsibilities. And then I'm going to handle my responsibilities. You handle your responsibilities. If someone needs help, that's very different. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about regular, everyday living skills, regular, everyday living that a person goes through for being a human being, right? We're feeling overly responsible for really common basic stuff that other people really should be doing for themselves, right? So that's how, we're having poor boundaries when we struggle with codependency. Another one, someone who struggles with codependency, they could have a really hard time soothing themselves or like comforting themselves or calming themselves down. So it's sort of like getting agitated or upset or irritated, and then it's just like it just builds and builds and builds, and then you just kind of hang out in that level 10 for a long period of time because we're looking for someone else to come and soothe us, someone to come and comfort us. But the problem is we could be out of control in our behavior, so they're really not even able to comfort us. So one thing that's really common, someone who struggles from codependency, they have a hard time soothing or comforting themselves, a hard time saying, you know what, this is just a rough thing. This is a misunderstanding, or this is a curve in the road, and I'm going to just follow this through and see where this goes. Or, wow, this isn't what I was planning, but let me just see where this leads. Or, you know what? I can adapt. Things change. We don't really have those skills. We're a bit more rigid. So when we make the plans and it doesn't go the way that we need it to, we can kind of get stuck and hung up there. And part of that comes from the inability to soothe ourselves or to comfort ourselves. And really, if you kind of go back through other videos, one thing that's very common in terms of what we're really afraid of is that fear of abandonment. We're afraid of being rejected, mostly because we're afraid of being left, right? Or being left for someone else. So if I'm worried that you're going to leave me, especially if my value is wrapped up in that and I'm trying to be super valuable for you, when things don't work out, I can just jump to crisis, right? Because now I'm thinking, I'm not capable, I'm not competent, you're going to see that and you're going to leave me. So that's another reason why we put so much pressure on ourselves, which in turn makes us put a lot of pressure on the relationship, because we're trying to make everything be just right or just perfect so that the other person, we feel like that's going to make the person trust us, which is going to make them want us more than anyone else, which is going to make us safe. But the reality is, that's very rarely how relationships work, right? It's usually finding someone that you love, that you care for, that you want to be there for, that you want to help. But when we have codependency, we only see it one way. We don't really think, oh, I want to be with someone who also wants this for me, wants to do the same things for me. Okay, another trait is being preoccupied with your partner. So if you're preoccupied with anything, it's like your first thought, your second thought, your third thought. It's just always right in the front of your mind, always right on the tip of your tongue. It's the one thing that when you're not intentionally trying to focus on something, it's where your brain goes, right? That's what a preoccupation is. So someone who struggles with codependency, we can become really preoccupied with our partners. This is where you're going to watch them and then measure their response, and then you're going to assign meaning. So that would be, like, let's say my partner comes home, I hug my partner, and then I'm like, you pulled away first. I knew you didn't love me, right? I'm seeing who pulls away first. I'm watching where their eyes are going. I'm watching, where they sat down when they first came home. Did they come sit right next to me? Because that's going to mean they love me and want to be with me. But if they sat like in the armchair instead, then I'm going to think, oh, I knew it. They don't love me, something's wrong, and I immediately start to panic, right? That's what happens when we struggle with codependency. So we watch our partner like a hawk, we get preoccupied with them, and then we measure their response and try to assign meaning. And all of this is just exhausting. This is part of how we make relationships a prison, because we feel like we have to constantly be doing and constantly be watching, and it's miserable. We end up not living a life, right? This becomes our whole time with this person. The last one, I believe, and again, this is from How to Stop Chasing Rejection. You can find it on Amazon. Number 13 is people pleasing. So when we struggle with codependent traits, we can fall into these people pleasing practices or people pleasing behaviors. And that's where we're trying to make someone almost proud of us, or we're trying to be super useful to someone. So sometimes someone just uses us for information and we don't see it. Right? We're trying to be useful. And so if it's information that they need, then we're just like, well, giving all of our business up or giving all of someone else's business up. And then we can really regret it later on, right? Because that's also crossing a boundary if you're telling someone else's business. But in the moment, you kind of just have blinders on and you only see the person who's trying to get something from you. And all you can think about is pleasing that person. And that can cause you to abandon people that you even care about more than this person. And it's really frustrating. People pleasing is so frustrating. So if you like all of this, again, you can find it in How to Stop Chasing Rejection. It not only covers those traits that we've been talking about, but it also talks about how to eventually move forward so you can heal and grow and learn to have peace in your relationships instead of stop making them a prison. So take good care, and I'll see you in the next one.